the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to everyone, our subscribers. Here we gather again for another Shabbat with great joy and shalom. This is where we belong, in the Shabbat. It's such a place of the presence of echadness with Yehovah. It's just a beautiful experience. If you've never experienced it, I encourage you to seek out the meaning and the call of God to observe the Shabbat. It's not just a 20-minute service or a 45-minute attendance at a shul or at synagogue. It's our lifestyle. It's who we are and what we do as we gather in the presence of Yehovah on the day that He has set apart and invited us to come and participate with Him in it and to spend time with Him. It's no different than having a family gathering and enjoying a meal together and just sitting around and learning and exchanging thoughts and ideas and understanding of what Father has to say. So, the Parashah for today, which I'll find out when I look at my last week's. For some reason, I think I did the one too early. I don't know. I'm getting old, folks. I just can't. What can I say? I can't keep track of certain things, and so if I'm duplicating something, my apologies. But when I was preparing for the Shabbat message today, I really drew a blank for some reason. I just didn't know what. I didn't have anything to bring forth that the Spirit of the Lord was speaking to me, that He was impressing me with. And so I kind of laid everything down and I decided, well, I'm just going to wait. And I mean, I read all the scripture verses related to this Parashah. Nothing really came. So I closed the door to my office and decided I was just going to go and just see what the Lord has to speak to me. And this has happened before, where I'm on my way home, or I get home and I go to bed and I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden the Lord starts speaking to me, and He gives me an order and a message and steps to follow. Because I generally know the Parashah, so so that's kind of how it went. And as I mentioned last week, we're at the far side of the Jordan River, preparing to go into the Promised Land. Now, what's the correlation to us for that? Well, quite frankly, I believe that those who are called by His name, those who believe in Him, those who follow His Moedim and His Shabbats and His appointed times and order and His mitzvot, we're on the far side of the Jordan right now, preparing to enter into the Promised Land, which to some is the Messianic era, okay, or the time of Tikkun Olam, to Christians and the Messianic Jews. It's the return of the Mashiach. And so Hashem has just impressed me to focus in on chapter 8 of Devarim. And in the crosshairs of chapter 8, I want to go over Daniel 7. Because Daniel 7 speaks of the end of days, the time of God reconciling the world to himself and bringing things to a culmination. Wiping out evil, chaining it, and causing us to enter into an age where the Mashiach will rule from Yerushalayim and rule the nations and his people Israel. So, I personally feel we're at the end of this long wilderness journey, and all the signs are pointing in that direction. All that's been fulfilled is pointing in that direction. There are a few things that still have to take place, but I would say we're within 20 years, if not sooner, of the return of the Mashiach and the beginning of the millennial kingdom, the seventh day. So, let me read chapter 8, because what I want to focus in on is the key elements that prepare us to be accounted as the 10 virgins, the 5 that when the thief came in the night, they had oil for their lamps, and they entered in with the bridegroom. I think part of that preparation is contained in chapter 8 here. All the mitzvot I'm giving you today, you are to take care to obey, so that you will live, increase your numbers, enter and take possession of the land Yehovah swore about to your ancestors. You are to remember everything of the way in which Yehovah led you these 40 years in the desert. And what was that? We've got to remember that this life that we are living, the generations, even from the Exodus, those whose hearts are given and circumcised to Yehovah. What are we going through? What is the purpose of our living and our struggles and our challenges? Certainly everybody likes a smooth, straight path to walk on. But that's not the way God set it up. As it says here, you are to remember everything of the way in which Adonai led you these 40 years in the desert. Do you remember in your own life how Yehovah has been leading you over the past 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years? Because Yehovah sees it as, in this case with the Israelites, the time of humbling and testing you in order to know what was in your heart, whether you would obey his mitzvot or not. So what did Jehovah do? He humbled you, allowing you to become hungry. What does it mean to be hungry? Think of your lives and all the things that you desired to have, to accomplish, to attain. There's a hunger for those things. And He provided. He sustained you. He fed you with manna. Man shall not live by bread alone. Not only does man have a need for food, but he has a need to know, to acquire, to attain, to accomplish, to bring into being those things that are in him as a person, that God has ordained, that God has placed in you, that are a part of the character and nature of who you are as a human being created in the image of Jehovah. It's very normal to have desires to do and accomplish and attain. Our God has a plan that's laid out, that He is pursuing and treading out and will accomplish and will bring to pass and will attain the restoration of the nations, of His people. But there comes a humbling and a testing, because Jehovah wants to see where your heart is. Whether you, in the midst of all the trials and tribulations and struggles, whether or not you will remain committed and loyal and humble before Him, not seeing it as some kind of punishment or God's mad at you for something, but that He is there training and disciplining and preparing you for what? To enter the promised land, the eternal dwelling place with Him. He has brought us this path, on this path, to make us understand that a person does not live on food alone, but on everything that comes from the mouth of Jehovah. During these 40 years, the clothing you were wearing didn't grow old. Your feet didn't swell up. Think, now just stop for a moment and think deeply. Moshe is challenging this generation back at the time of preparing to enter and cross the Jordan into the promised land, and he is preparing this generation that will welcome the Messiah, the Mashiach, and the restoration, tikkun olam, of the world. I believe we're at parallel places. Almost like there's a word for it I can't think of, but it begins with an S. Oh, synchronized or whatever. So we have, 3,500 years ago and today, and they match. They line up. They're synchronized. But he's telling us here, then and now, what is required of us to enable us to enter in and accomplish the purposes that he is taking us in to the promised land. Think deeply about all that you've been through, where you've come from and where you are now in light of where God is taking you. Think deeply about it. You see, Yehovah was disciplining you, just as a man disciplines his child. If Yehovah doesn't discipline you, you're an orphan. That means there's got to be some challenges, some correction, some instruction. So, obey the mitzvot of Yehovah your God, living as he directs and fearing him. For Adonai your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams, springs, and water welling up from the depths in the valleys and on hillsides. It is a land of wheat and barley, grapevines, fig trees, and pomegranates. A land of olive oil and honey. A land where you will eat food in abundance and lack nothing. A land where the stones contain iron and the hills can be mined for copper. So you will eat and be satisfied, and you will bless Adonai your God for the good land he has given you. And then he warns them, and he warns us. Be careful not to forget Yehovah your God by not obeying his mitzvot, his rulings, his regulations that I'm giving you today. Otherwise, and that applies to what I'm bringing forth here today to bring to all those who are listening. Because I think what God has given me, it's all part of it, but it's not repeated as much as we see here, where he says, be careful not to forget Yehovah your God by not obeying his mitzvot, rulings, regulations that I am giving you today. Otherwise, after you have eaten and are satisfied, built fine houses and lived in them, and increased your herds, flocks, silver, gold, and everything else you own, you will become proud-hearted. Now think about that. Really important. Otherwise, if you don't be careful to not forget Adonai your God, this is verse 11. How do we forget our God? It's a good question. How is it that you forget our God? Moshe is warning them now to be careful, to not forget. How do we forget? By not obeying his mitzvot. Well, in order to obey them, you've got to know them. In order to obey them, You have to immerse yourself in them. You should be going over them on a continual, regular, routine basis so that they become so second nature to you. How does an athlete train? By repetition. How does a pitcher throw a fastball and place it in the strike zone 60 feet 6 inches away from the catcher? By practicing. By creating that muscle memory that is ingrained into his muscles to be able to throw that pitch with the eye to the nerves, to the muscle, to the arm, to the motion, to hit that strike zone every time. You know, if we don't know the mitzvot, we're not going to hit the strike zone. If we don't know his regulations and rulings, we're not going to be in the zone. And that zone is Yehovah's zone of accuracy and success and conquering and dominating our existence. Reflecting Him, imaging Him. And what does He say? In order to obey them, you got to know them. If you don't know them, I'd like to meet any of you that are obeying them. He says, otherwise, if you don't do this, after you've eaten and are satisfied, built fine houses and lived in them, and increased your herds and flocks, silver, gold, and everything else you own, you will become proud-hearted, forgetting Yehovah, your God, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, where you lived as slaves, who led you through the vast and fearsome desert, with its poisonous snakes, scorpions, and waterless thirsty ground, who brought water out of flint rock for you, who fed you in the desert with manna, unknown to your ancestors, all the while, in the process of all that, humbling and testing you in order to do you good in the end. You see, this whole group of Israelites, this generation, had been tested and humbled in order so that they could reach the place and point in time where they're prepared to enter into the promised land. Are we any different? What is it that we're waiting to cross over into? The return of the Mashiach. To being ready for the return of the Mashiach. As in the parable of the 10 virgins. They had their lamps. They had extra oil. Do you have your oil? Do you have your oil? What does that oil symbolically represent? The Spirit of God. The presence of God. The anointing of God. It says, when Yeshua ascended with the Talmudim I'm sure where I can share that emotion, that feeling. If you've ever been around someone that was just inspirational, full of zeal and life and truth and just a good person, and you had to part from their presence and not be able to see them again for maybe a year to your knowledge because they lived far away. I remember as a child, there were many times when I went to camp, and there were certain counselors or leaders there that I happened to be placed under to learn. And they were just very special people. I remember crying and weeping to see and part our ways. I can imagine how the Talmudim felt when Yeshua was going to return to the Father. But he said, I'm going to send you the Ruach HaKodesh, which will lead you into all truth and teach you. Well, it's like anything. If you don't invest in the practice, in the training, in the development, and I say immersing ourselves in the mitzvot, in the Torah, so it becomes a part of us. The Word is made flesh on our hearts. When that time comes, as in the 10 virgins, you may be one of those that runs out of oil because you haven't immersed yourselves in the mitzvot, the rulings and the regulations that Jehovah is giving us, has given us, and wants us to know and walk out faithfully. He said, if you don't do this, you're going to forget me. You're going to be distracted. You're easily going to find your time and energy and interest being committed to other things than constantly being immersed in learning, reviewing, studying, embracing the mitzvot. Now, why is that? He said that if you forget, you will become proud-hearted, forgetting Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, where you lived as slaves, who led you through the vast and fearsome desert with its poisonous snakes, scorpions, and waterless thirsty ground, who brought water out of the flint rock for you, who fed you in the desert with manna, unknown to your ancestors, all the while humbling and testing you in order to do you good in the end. You see, you will think to yourself, if you forget and don't obey the mitzvot, the rulings, and the regulations, you will think to yourself, my own power and strength of my own hand have gotten me where I am today. No. You are to remember Jehovah your God, because it is He who is giving you power to get wealth in order to confirm his covenant with you, which he swore to your ancestors, as is happening here even today. You see, this generation 3,500 years ago and this generation today, we're here not because of us, but because God and the commitment we've made. If you're Jewish, it's fulfilling the covenant to Abraham. If you're a Gentile, it's fulfilling God's promise to you for believing and embracing Him and circumcising your heart to honoring the mitzvot and God's moedim and the lifestyle. You're grafted in. You become a part of the Commonwealth of Israel, the lifestyle. It says, because it is He, Yehovah, who is giving you the power to get wealth in order to confirm His covenant, which He swore to your ancestors, as is happening even today. And remember, the whole group that was going into the Promised Land was a mixed multitude. There were those that were from the nations that when it came time to exit Egypt, to be delivered out, for all the plagues and calamities that they saw the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob perform, with the many gods that they had worshipped and followed, they knew in their hearts there was something that awakened them, such that we need today as well an awakening to go with the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, to be led into the return and the promised land, the tikkun olam, the restoration of the world. We're not staying here. I'm going to prepare as the 10 virgins and 5 were prepared. They had the oil. Jews and Gentiles today, we need to prepare. We need to reestablish, if you've backslidden or moved away or distanced yourself from your Jewish roots, from your ancestry, from your Jewish identity. You need to reestablish. You need to come back. Eitz Chaim. Bring us back. Bring us back, Yehovah, and we will come. And with that, you know, as Jews, we've experienced and endured many things. There have been much that has changed. And in the book of Daniel, we see the effects of the attack, the assault on Judaism, the assault on the Torah, the assault on even what was written by Jews, the Talmudim, the Gospels and the Epistles. It's coming out now. They are uncovering the manuscripts of the writers of the Gospels and epistles, and it's being realized that they were written in Hebrew. And that there's idioms in Hebrew that can't be translated to the Greek or English. So the meaning and interpretation is somewhat clouded, perhaps a little off mark. It's like anything. If you're on a journey and you're off by 1 degree, you are starting at point A, you're not going to get to point B. You're going to miss it. And so as these manuscripts and these revisions come out, I encourage you to seek out the understanding of the idioms and the meaning and how they change the trajectory of how you look at things. Now bear in mind, the fundamental message of the Gospels and Epistles is there. It's not so far off, but it really brings you back to your Hebrew roots when you understand the idioms and what Paul was urging and the apostles were urging. And so, not only have the Jews been affected by some of the events down through history to change and distort and cloud and in some cases misrepresent, but so have the Gentiles and the Christians. And I believe we're in a period now where God said to Daniel, don't write these things down. They're not for this time. I believe that Yehovah is opening the book of what Daniel saw, and he's pouring it out. We're beginning to see those things, as was also told to Enoch. Do not write anymore. These things are for the end of days. Folks, I believe we're in the end of days. And so in Daniel, we read chapter 7, verse 22, until the Ancient One came. Who's that? Who's the Ancient One? Judgment was given in favor of the holy ones of the Most High, and the time came for the holy ones to take over the kingdom. This is what he said. The fourth animal will be a fourth kingdom on earth. It will be different from the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and yet another will arise after them. Now he will be different from the earlier ones. And he will put down 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High and try to exhaust the holy ones of the Most High. Who are the holy ones of the Most High? Those who have given their heart, soul, mind, and strength to the Most High God, Yehovah, El Elyon, who have surrendered their lives, believe in Him, honor His Shabbat, honor His Moedim, honor His Shemitah, honor His Jubilees. Honor all, as what I read, honors all the mitzvot, the rulings and regulations that Jehovah has called us to. But it says that he will speak words against the Most High and try to exhaust the holy ones of the Most High. It says try to exhaust. It doesn't say he will exhaust. And he will attempt to alter the seasons and the law. Well, now, what is Daniel referring to here as the seasons? What is the seasons? The Moed. And what's the law? The Torah and the mitzvot. It says that, and the holy ones will be handed over to him for a time, times, and a half time. Folks, when we look at history, we judge and follow history and understand where we are based on what? A calendar. Where did the original calendar begin? At creation. It started in a series of sevens. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Shabbat, day 7. And when did the Shemitah come into play? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6. Shemitah. And then the Jubilee, which is 7 Shemitahs to restore everything back to its original owner. You see, there's several calendars at the time of Yeshua. As Jews, we follow the calendar that Hillel laid out. Since 326. But he laid out the calendar for as far as we can see. But there was an Enochian calendar and a Zadok calendar and then a Dead Sea Scrolls calendar. And so the question is, what are we following? You see, God established his appointed times, as in Vayikra 23. These are my appointed times. Where did the calendar begin? What did God say? He pointed it out to Israel that Nisan 1, leading up to Pesach. God introduced the beginning of the year and how to identify and count his appointed times. And there was an order and a numerical system. But it says here that the evil one will attempt to alter the seasons and the law. So there's much dispute in many different sectors of Judaism and Christianity that question the accuracy of the calendar. But I can tell you this, the virgins with the lamps, the 10 virgins, they will know and embrace and take hold of those appointed times according to how Yehovah has set them up. And I say that the Moedim, Pesach, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot are just as well for the Christians. As a matter of fact, it's something when the Gentiles first begin to come in to the Messianic community that they've honored and followed. But something happened. Something happened. As Paul said, there are those amongst us who are following another gospel. There were those, in light of the world situation at that time, the breakup, the fall of the deterioration and coming apart of Rome, the economic disintegration that was looming. And there were those that decided to set up their own order, their own seasons and times. Folks, they bifurcated from Yehovah's appointed times. And when Yehovah returns, He's coming back for those whose oil, that which has been taught, that which has been lived out and routinely followed, the mitzvot, the rulings, the regulations. Those are the ones that will have the oil and be ready for the time when the thief comes in the middle of the night. And how do I back that up? You see, Gentiles, it says that they're grafted in to the commonwealth of Israel. Now, where did Paul get that? Well, I'm just going to read a couple references, and then I'm going to leave it with you. In several weeks, in September, we're having a special speaker who will be teaching on the depth and the expanse of the meaning of the calendar and why God's appointed times are connected to those who will be found ready when the thief comes in the night. God's laid it all out here for us. See, it applies to Jews and Gentiles that are believers. In Exodus 12, Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "This is the regulation for the Pesach lamb. No foreigner is to eat it. But if anyone has a slave he bought for money. Have you been bought with a price? Have you been bought with a price? Why do I read in the Psalms that says, Yah, I am your slave? Have you surrendered your life, and are you a slave to Yah? Have you given your life completely to His appointed times, His ways, His rulings, His regulations? Have you immersed yourself in them to know them? Have you conditioned yourself and trained? So it's second nature. The success of an elite athlete is that he's trained his muscle memory to perform without even having to think about it. It's ingrained into the fibers of his muscle and his being that it just does it. It doesn't know any other path to follow. The neurotransmitters don't know any other path to travel. Do you know God's Word and His appointed times, His moedim, His rulings, His regulations, His mitzvot, so that it's second nature? But if anyone has a slave he bought for money, when you have circumcised him, he may eat it. And I comment that with circumcised, not just in the flesh, and not necessarily in the flesh, but a circumcised heart, as Paul says. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile. It's the circumcised heart that God is after. And if your heart is circumcised, you're going to want to obey the mitzvot. You're going to want to know them. You're going to want to follow His rulings and regulations. You're going to want and desire to immerse yourself in them. It says here, if a foreigner staying with you wants to observe Adonai's Pesach, all his males must be circumcised. If you're a believer, I pray and hope that your heart is circumcised. But no uncircumcised person is to eat it. The same teaching. It says here, let me read back. If a foreigner staying with you wants to observe Adonai's Pesach, all his males must be circumcised. Then he may take part and observe it. Shamar. Be careful not to forget Adonai your God by not obeying. Shamar. The same teaching, but no uncircumcised person is to eat the Pesach. Circumcised heart, physically circumcised if you choose. The same teaching is to apply equally to the citizen and to the foreigner living amongst you. Who's the citizen? Have you become a citizen of the Commonwealth of Israel by receiving and accepting the atoning sacrifice of Yeshua as your Messiah, as the substitute for your sin and rebellion towards Yehovah? If you have, you are now a citizen of the Commonwealth of Yehovah's Israel, both physical and spiritual. Folks, that's in Exodus. It's not in the New Testament or the Gospels and Epistles. What I just read is 3,500 years ago. Vayikra 24. He who kills an animal is to make restitution, but he who kills another person is to be put to death. The point here, Jehovah says, you are to apply the same standard of judgment to the foreigner as to the citizen, because I am Jehovah your God. The same rulings, same regulations. And then in Numbers chapter 15, again, 3,500 years ago, it applies, it's the foundation, the resource, the source upon which Paul in the epistles expounds on. It's a circumcised heart. You become a part of the commonwealth of Israel. If an individual sins by mistake, he is, now bear in mind, this was in the wilderness when they were offering up the sacrifices. It was a mixed multitude. A mixed multitude of Jews, Hebrews, and others from other nations that left Egypt when Israel was delivered out. Because they said, we're going with the God of the Israelites. He is the most high God above all other gods that we've ever seen here in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, where there were 3,000 gods being worshipped. Pick one. And they said, we now know there is only one God, the most high God above all other gods. And that is El Elyon, the God of the Hebrews. Here in Numbers 15 it says, if an individual sins by mistake, he is to offer a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. The Kohen will make atonement before Jehovah for the person who makes a mistake by sinning inadvertently. He will make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven, no matter whether he is a citizen of Israel or a foreigner living with them. You are to have one law for whoever it is that does something wrong by mistake. Folks, it applies then and now. In that generation and in this generation. That generation that exited was delivered out of evil, and this generation that will be delivered out of the beast system and the confines of this world. When the Mashiach returns, and evil will be rounded up and thrown in the abyss and removed for 1,000 years. Then again, Paul expounds in Romans 3. Is God the God of the Jews only? Isn't it He also the God of the Gentiles? Question mark. They're questioning it. The answer is yes, He is indeed the God of the Gentiles. Because, as you will admit, God is Echad, one. Therefore, He will consider righteous the circumcised on the ground of trusting, and the uncircumcised through that same trusting. Does it follow that we abolish Torah by this trusting? Paul's response? Let's rephrase that. Was the Torah done away with? Or did Yeshua fulfill it? Paul is saying here the same thing. Does it follow that we abolish the Torah here in Romans? By this trusting? The Gentiles trusting? Heaven forbid. On the contrary, we confirmed the Torah then, after the ascension, the sacrifice, and the atoning work of Yeshua the Moshiach. We confirm Torah. It hasn't been done away with. So, if you're going to be prepared for when the thief in the night comes. I encourage you to start seriously thinking about Yehovah's appointed times. Yehovah's mitzvot, 613. And it was expounded on and expanded to almost 1,500 in the Gospels and the Epistles. But his rulings and regulations. In the weeks to come, there will be more expounded upon as we get to our conference on the 20th of September, when our special guest comes to lecture and teach on what he has researched and studied with a group of researchers and worked with one that you may know, Nehemiah Gordon. Folks, if you want to be counted and ready and know the time and the season that's been altered in the end of days, and it's like we're groping around in the darkness. Is it this calendar? Is it that calendar? Is it this form of determining the beginning of the month? What is it? Well, the research has been done to clear the air and bring focus and clarity. It's time. I believe that we need to, more than any other time, God's providing a way for us to know His appointed times, His seasons, His moedim, His mitzvot, His rulings and regulations. That's what we teach here. That's what we're about here. I hope this has awakened you to some degree. This is Rabbi Moshe from Beit Torah. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Baruch Hashem. If you have questions, feel free to email me in the comment section. Go to my website, beittorah.org, or my YouTube channel, my website, thestraightandnarrowway.com. Where all my videos are. So I hope this gives you something to kind of maybe get a little uncomfortable over and start awakening to what is about to be thrust upon us as we see Revelation unfolding, as we see Matthew 24 unfolding. Bless you. And the God of Shalom, which passeth all understanding, guard your heart your minds and your emotions in Messiah Yeshua. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. Shabbat shalom, Shavua Tov. This is Rabbi Moshe in Schnecksville, PA. Come and visit us if you're moved. If the Spirit moves you, we look forward to you joining us for a service. Shabbat shalom.
Hear now, Jacob my servant. Hear now, O Israel. It was I who